The human fleet arrived at Krell Prime just after dawn on the Voth homeworld. Admiral Bora watched the beautiful planet on her view screen, its purple oceans and silver cities gleaming in the light of their sun. 3 billion Voth civilians lived down there. None of them would be harmed if she could help it, but the regent who had ordered the massacre at Haven's Rest lived there too, and he would face justice. All ships in position, Admiral, Captain Myung-hee reported from the tactical station. The entire human armada surrounded Krell Prime, a wall of steel that nothing could penetrate. The Voth military fleet is holding position above their capital city. Bora studied the formation. 200 Voth ships, all that remained of their once mighty fleet. They were in defensive positions, protecting the palace district where Regent Varash ruled his empire. Open a channel, Bora ordered. Broadcast on all frequencies. When the channel opened, she spoke clearly and calmly. This is Fleet Admiral Bora of the Human Space Forces. To the Voth military, you have one opportunity to surrender. Power down your weapons, evacuate your ships, and you will be treated fairly under the laws of war. You have 10 minutes to comply. The response came from Regent Voresh himself. His voice was still arrogant, but Bora could hear the fear underneath. You dare threaten us in our own home? The Voth will never surrender to Primitive. Bora cut the channel. Countdown started. All ships prepare for combat. The 10 minutes passed in silence. Not a single Voth ship powered down. They would fight to the end, unable to accept that they had lost. Time's up, Admiral, Myung-hee said quietly. Bora took a breath. She thought of her son, of his students, of all the children who had died at Haven's Rest. Then she gave the order. Fire. The battle for Krell Prime lasted 4 hours. The Voth fought bravely, but they were outnumbered and outmatched. Human ships moved with practiced precision, targeting weapons and engines rather than killing crews. When Voth ships were disabled, human boarding parties gave the crews one last chance to surrender. Some did. Many didn't. By the end, the space around Krell Prime was filled with the wreckage of the Voth fleet. On the planet's surface, Commander Daewon led the final ground operation. 5,000 human soldiers in drop pods heading straight for the Palace District. The Voth Military Command Center was there, along with Regent Varash himself. The drop pods hit the ground outside the palace like meteors. Daewon soldiers moved immediately, securing the perimeter. Voth ground forces tried to stop them, but the humans had spent 3 months learning how to fight Voth soldiers. It wasn't even close. Daewon walked through the palace halls with his squad, his weapon ready. They passed rooms full of Voth civilians, servants, administrators, people just doing their jobs. He waved them aside. Get out, go home. This isn't about you. The Voth civilians ran, confused but grateful to be spared. The throne room was massive, designed to impress and intimidate visitors. Regent Vorash sat on his raised platform, surrounded by his personal guards. His scales had lost their gleam. He looked old and tired and afraid. I surrender, Vorash said as soon as he saw Daewon. I surrender. The Voth surrender. Just, please, no more killing. Daewon walked up the steps to the throne. His soldiers held their weapons on the guards, who slowly lowered their own arms. 3 months ago, Daewon said quietly, you sat in a room like this and laughed at me. You told me that humans were weak, that our emotions made us soft, that we didn't understand real power. Vorash said nothing. His eyes were fixed on the human soldier standing before him. 400,000 people died because of what you did, Daewon continued. 400,000 civilians, families, children, you killed them to make a point, to show other species that humans could be slaughtered without consequence. I was wrong, Vorash said desperately. I understand now. I was wrong about humans. Please, we surrender. Spare my people. Daewon stared at him for a long moment. Then he spoke into his communicator. Admiral, the Regent has surrendered. Palace is secure. Bora's voice came back. Good. Bring him to the fleet. He stands trial for crimes against sentient life. Daewon's soldiers moved forward and took Vorash into custody. The Regent didn't resist. As they led him away, Daewon looked around the throne room one last time. 3 months ago, he had stood in a similar room and been mocked for trying to make peace. Now that same throne sat empty, its power broken forever. He walked outside to find the palace district in chaos. Voth civilians were everywhere, watching in shock as human soldiers moved through their capital. But the humans weren't hurting anyone. They were just taking control of military facilities and government buildings. Captain Hana's voice came over the fleet communications. Admiral, we're detecting Voth broadcasts. They're asking what happens now. What do we tell them? Bora appeared on screens across Krell Prime. Every Voth on the planet could see her. She looked tired but determined. The war is over, she said simply. The Voth military has been defeated. Regent Vorash and his command structure will stand trial for their crimes. But the Voth people themselves are not our enemies. You will not be harmed. Your civilian infrastructure will not be destroyed. We are not here to conquer or enslave you. She paused, making sure they understood. We are here to ensure you never threaten anyone again, Bora continued. Your military will be permanently disbanded. Your weapons facilities will be dismantled. Human forces will occupy your worlds until we are certain that you pose no danger to galactic peace. But you will be allowed to rebuild, to live, to grow. Just without the ability to wage war. Across Krell Prime, Voth civilians watched in confusion. They had been told that humans were soft, weak, driven by emotion. They had expected total destruction if humanity won. Instead, they were being offered survival and a chance to rebuild. Why? One Voth broadcaster asked, speaking to Admiral Bora directly. Why do you spare us? After what we did to your colony? Bora's face hardened. Because we're not you. We don't murder civilians to make political statements. We don't target children to prove our strength. We came here to destroy your military, not your people. That's the difference between us. She looked directly at the camera. You wanted to see human rage, she said. You wanted to teach us that mercy is weakness and peace is foolishness. So we showed you what happens when humans stop being merciful, when we remember what we're capable of, when we unleash the capacity for total war that we buried deep inside ourselves centuries ago. Bora stood up, her message delivered. But we also showed you that even in war, even in rage, we don't lose our humanity, she continued. We don't become like you. We fight with purpose, not cruelty. We destroy military threats, not innocent lives. That's why we're standing here victorious. And you're wondering why you're still alive. The broadcast ended. 2 days later, aboard the medical ship where the survivors of Haven's Rest were being cared for, a young girl stood at an observation window. Subin was 13 now, 5 years since that terrible day when her world burned. She had lived aboard human ships during the entire war, watching as humanity avenged her parents and the 400,000 others who died. Admiral Bora came to stand beside her. The Admiral had aged during the war, grief and command weighing heavy on her shoulders. But the war was over now. The Voth were defeated. The galaxy was safe. It's strange, Subin said quietly, still holding her mother's burned scarf. I wanted them to pay for what they did. I wanted them to burn like my home burned. But now you see them and realize they're just people, Bora finished. People who made terrible choices, but still people. Subin nodded. Does that make me weak? That I don't want them all dead? Bora put a hand on the girl's shoulder. No, child. That makes you human. We don't fight because we enjoy killing. We fight to protect those we love. And when the fighting is done, we remember how to be merciful again. She looked down at Krell Prime, where human soldiers were helping Voth civilians rebuild damaged areas. Your parents died because the Voth mistook our kindness for weakness, Bora said gently. They learned too late that humans offer peace not from fear but from strength. We are capable of total destruction. We proved that these past months. But we choose mercy when we can. That's what makes us who we are. Subin wiped her eyes. Will it happen again? Will someone else attack us? Not for a very long time, Bora said. We made sure of that. The galaxy watched what happened here. They saw that humans try peace first, but they also saw what happens when our peace is answered with massacre. They saw what we become when we're forced to fight. She smiled sadly. Other species will think twice now before threatening a human world. They'll remember the Voth. They'll remember that we're the species that holds back until we can't anymore. And when we can't, we don't stop until the threat is completely eliminated. Far below, in a prison cell on Krell Prime, Regent Vorash sat alone. He would stand trial tomorrow for his crimes. He would face justice for the 400,000 lives he had taken. And he would spend the rest of his life understanding the lesson he had tried to teach humanity. That mercy was not weakness. That peace was not fear. That the most dangerous species in the galaxy was not the one that loved war, but the one that understood it too well and chose peace anyway. The first strike came at the Voth military world of Thrak. It was a fortress planet covered in weapons platforms and defense shields. The Voth military command expected humans to arrive with caution, to probe their defenses, to fight the way civilized species fought, with rules and honor and predictable strategy. They were wrong. Captain Hana sat in the command chair of the destroyer Retribution, watching the tactical display as the human fleet emerged from faster-than-light travel. 300 ships appeared in Thrax orbit all at once, surrounding the planet in perfect formation. Target acquisition complete, her weapons officer reported. All defense platforms are locked. Fire, Hana said simply. The Voth defenders had 5 seconds to react before every human ship opened fire simultaneously. Railguns, missile batteries, energy weapons. Everything humanity had built in the past 3 months poured down on Thrax defenses. The orbital platforms didn't stand a chance. Within 2 minutes, the planet's entire defensive network was scrap metal floating in space. Broadcast the message, Hana ordered. Every Voth ship in the system received the same transmission. It was footage from Haven's Rest, showing their own people burning. At the end, a simple message appeared in Voth language. You wanted to show us power. Now we show you. The Voth military commander on Thrak tried to open negotiations. Hana cut the channel without responding. There would be no negotiations. Not anymore. The human fleet descended on Thrak like a hammer. They weren't aiming for civilian centers. Those were left untouched. But every military installation, every barracks, every weapons depot was systematically destroyed. Ground forces landed and gave Voth soldiers one chance to surrender. Those who did were taken prisoner. Those who didn't were eliminated with brutal efficiency. Commander Daewon led the ground assault personally. His soldiers moved through the military compound with cold precision, clearing room by room. When Voth soldiers tried to fight, they discovered that humans had been studying warfare for thousands of years. Every tactic, every strategy, every brutal lesson learned in centuries of conflict was being used now. North Sector secured, one of his squad leaders reported. 15 enemy casualties, no prisoners. They wouldn't surrender. Daewon looked at the burning military base. 3 months ago, he had been a diplomat. Now he was a soldier again, and he felt nothing but cold focus. Move to the next target. Remember, military only. If you see civilians, let them go. This became the pattern. World by world, the human fleet tore through Voth space. They moved with terrifying speed, hitting multiple targets simultaneously. The Voth military had never fought an enemy like this. One that combined overwhelming force with surgical precision, one that seemed to be everywhere at once. At the fortress world of Graal, Lieutenant Hana's ship became legendary. The Retribution appeared in systems where Voth commanders thought they were safe, destroying supply lines and communication relays. The Voth started calling her the Ghost, because her ship seemed to materialize from nowhere. On the industrial world of Krax, General Hyunwoo led an assault that destroyed 6 major weapons factories in one night. He used tactics that the Voth couldn't counter. Humans fighting in ways that seemed impossible, coordinating across vast distances with perfect timing. The Voth tried to respond. They gathered their fleets for major counterattacks. But humanity had learned something during their own wars that the Voth had never understood. Modern warfare wasn't about honor or glory. It was about information, logistics, and the will to do whatever was necessary. Human intelligence knew where every Voth fleet was going before it arrived. Human cyber warfare teams disabled Voth communications. Human psychological operations broadcast footage of Haven's Rest before every battle, reminding their soldiers exactly why they were fighting, and it was working. In the command center of Regent Vorash's palace on Krell Prime, reports flooded in. The Voth military was collapsing on every front. 12 major installations destroyed, 4 military worlds captured, hundreds of ships lost, tens of thousands of soldiers dead or taken prisoner. How is this possible? Vorash demanded, staring at the tactical displays. They're primitives. Their technology is inferior. They should be easy to defeat. His military advisor, Commander Skarn, looked at the reports with growing horror. They fight like nothing we've ever seen, Regent. They don't follow the rules of warfare. They attack from multiple directions at once. They target our logistics, our communications, our command structure, and they never ever stop. Then we increase our forces. Send the 2nd and 3rd fleets too. The 2nd fleet is gone, Regent, Skarn interrupted. It was ambushed at Valar. The 3rd fleet is surrounded at Mark and requesting permission to retreat. Vorash slammed his fist on the console. We are the Voth. We have ruled this sector for 3,000 years. We cannot be defeated by humans. Then you don't understand what we're facing, Skarn said quietly. These aren't the same humans who came here 3 months ago begging for peace. These humans... He pulled up footage from the battle at Threk. These humans have stopped pretending to be civilized. They've become something else. The footage showed human soldiers moving through a Voth military base. They moved like predators, efficient and merciless. When Voth soldiers tried to surrender, they were taken prisoner and treated well. But those who fought died in seconds, outmatched by humans who fought with a focused rage that seemed inhuman in its intensity. They're not trying to conquer us, Skarn continued. They're trying to destroy our ability to ever threaten them again. Every military asset we have is being systematically eliminated, and they're doing it in a way that makes it clear they could wipe us out completely if they wanted to, but they don't. They leave civilian areas untouched. They show mercy to those who surrender, and that makes them even more terrifying. Why? Vorash asked, confused. Because it means they're in complete control, Skarn said. They're not fighting from rage or hatred. They're fighting with purpose. They're teaching us a lesson, Regent. They're showing us that they could exterminate our entire species, but they're choosing not to. They're proving that when humans offer peace, it's not from weakness. It's from strength held in check. Vorash felt something he had never experienced before. Fear. Real cold fear. Try to contact them, he ordered. Offer negotiations. We've tried, Regent, Skarn said. They ignore all communications. They only broadcast one message. He pulled it up on screen. The footage of Haven's Rest, followed by those simple words. You wanted to show us power. Now we show you. Then what do we do? Vorash asked, his voice hollow. Skarn looked at the tactical display showing Voth space. Red markers indicated every location where human forces had struck. There were dozens of them, spreading like fire across their territory, and at the center of it all, a massive human fleet was gathering, moving steadily toward Krell Prime itself. We pray, Regent, Skarn said quietly. We pray that when they reach our homeworld, they still remember mercy. Admiral Bora stood on the bridge of the Indomitable, watching as her fleet assembled for the final push. 3 months of warfare had brought them here, to the edge of Voth home space. Behind them lay a trail of destroyed military installations and broken fleets. The Voth military machine had been systematically dismantled piece by piece. Latest intelligence reports, Admiral, her aide said, handing her a tablet. The Voth are attempting to recall all remaining forces to defend Krell Prime. They have maybe 200 capital ships left. Boran nodded. She felt tired, so tired. But she couldn't stop now. Not until this was finished. How many civilians on Krell Prime? She asked. 3 billion, Admiral. Then we make sure they survive this, Bora said firmly. Military targets only. I want precision strikes, not orbital bombardment. We're not here to slaughter civilians. We're here to end their military threat. She looked out at the stars, thinking of Haven's Rest, thinking of her son, thinking of all the people who had died because the Voth saw mercy as weakness. We tried peace, she said quietly. We offered them every chance. They chose this. Now we finish it. Behind her, 1,000 ships powered their weapons. The final battle was coming. And the Voth were finally beginning to understand what they had awakened. Humans didn't love war. They understood it too well to love it. But when they were forced to fight, when their children were threatened, when peace was answered with massacre, they became the most dangerous species in the galaxy. Because they fought not with pride or honor or glory. They fought with cold, calculated, absolute determination, and they didn't stop until the threat was ash. Dr. Tai Yang walked through the colony's agricultural sector, checking the grain fields that stretched toward the horizon. Haven's Rest was a beautiful world, with gentle seasons and rich soil. The colony had been here for 15 years, and it had grown from a few hundred pioneers to a thriving community of 400,000 people. These fields fed them all. His daughter Subin ran past him laughing as she chased a butterfly through the crops. She was 8 years old, with her mother's bright eyes and endless energy. Careful of the plants. He called after her, but he was smiling. This was why they had come to Haven's Rest, to build something peaceful. To give their children a better future among the stars. She never runs out of energy, does she? His wife Yuna appeared beside him, carrying a basket of fresh vegetables from their garden. She taught at the elementary school in the main settlement. educating the colony's youngest children. Today was a rest day and the three of them had planned a picnic in the fields, just like her mother, Taeyang said, kissing Yuna's cheek. Subin came running back, breathless and happy. Dad, Mom, can we go to the lake after lunch? Teacher Minji said there are new fish there. We'll see, Yuna said, but her smile promised yes. They never made it to the lake. The first alarm started at 1400 hours. It was a sound most colonists had never heard before, the emergency evacuation signal. Taeyang looked up at the sky, confused. Then he saw them. Dark shapes were moving across the blue afternoon sky, growing larger by the second. What is that? Subin asked, her voice small and frightened. Taeyang grabbed his communicator. This is Dr. Taeyang, what's happening? Captain Kwan's voice came through, tight with controlled panic. Unknown vessels in orbit. Multiple battleships. They're Voth. All civilians need to reach evacuation points immediately. This is not a drill. Yuna grabbed Subin's hand. Run! Now! They ran toward the settlement, but they weren't alone. Thousands of colonists were streaming from their homes and workplaces, all heading for the designated shelters and evacuation centers. Taeyang could see the ships in orbit now, massive and dark against the sky. There were dozens of them. His communicator crackled again. All citizens, this is Captain Kwan. The Voth have issued an ultimatum. They demand our immediate surrender and... His voice broke slightly. And enslavement. We are stalling for time and evacuating as many people as possible. Get to the transport ships. Get your families to safety. Enslavement? Yuna whispered, her face white with shock. Taeyang pushed them forward. Don't think about it. Just move. They reached the main settlement 15 minutes later. It was chaos. Parents were screaming for their children. Old people were being helped onto transport vehicles. The sky was filling with more ships. Smaller Voth craft descending through the atmosphere. Captain Kwan stood at the evacuation center, organizing the crowds with his small security force. He was a good man, a retired military officer who had come to Haven's Rest for peace just like everyone else. Now his face was grim with terrible knowledge. Families with children first, he shouted. Everyone else form orderly lines. We have 14 transport ships ready to launch. Stay calm and... The first explosion cut him off. It came from the northern part of the settlement where the hospital stood. A beam of blue light had lanced down from orbit, and where it struck, everything simply ceased to exist. The hospital and 6 city blocks around it were gone, replaced by a crater of melted earth and burning debris. The screaming started. They're firing on us, someone shouted. They're firing on civilians. More beams came down. The school where Yuna taught exploded in a ball of fire. The residential towers where families lived disintegrated. The Voth weren't aiming for military targets. There were no military targets. They were aiming for the places where the most people would die. Get on the ships, Captain Kwan was yelling. Everyone move, move! Taeyang pulled Yuna and Subin toward the nearest transport, but the crowd was crushing in around them. People were panicking, pushing, fighting to get aboard. He lifted Subin onto his shoulders, trying to keep her above the chaos. Another orbital strike hit the evacuation center. The blast wave threw Taeyang forward, and he lost his grip on Subin. She fell into Yuna's arms as debris rained down around them. A piece of burning metal as large as a car crashed down 10 feet away. This way, Yuna screamed, pulling them toward a transport ship that was already lifting off. Its loading ramp was still down and people were jumping aboard even as it rose into the air. They ran. Taeyang could feel the heat of fires on his back. He could hear the screams of people who couldn't reach the ships in time. Behind them, another orbital strike. Obliterated the agricultural sector, all those beautiful fields where Subin had chased butterflies less than an hour ago. They were 20 feet from the transport. When the building beside them exploded, Taeyang saw it happening, saw the wall of fire rushing toward them, and he did the only thing he could. He threw himself over his wife and daughter, covering them with his body. The blast picked them up and threw them like toys. Taeyang felt crushing pain, felt his body breaking, but he held on. He kept himself between the fire and his family. When they hit the ground, he couldn't feel his legs anymore. He couldn't feel anything except the weight of his daughter beneath him. Go, he whispered to Yuna. Blood was filling his mouth. Take her, go, no. Yuna was crying, trying to lift him. I won't leave you. You have to. He pushed Subin toward her mother with the last of his strength. Keep her safe. Tell her I love her. Tell her. The secondary explosion came from the fuel depot. The entire eastern section of the settlement went up in flames. Taehyang felt the heat wash over him, felt his body failing, but he saw Yuna grab Subin and run. He saw them reach the transport. He saw them climb aboard. Then he saw nothing at all. Yuna carried Subin up the transport's ramp, her daughter screaming for her father. She wanted to go back. Every part of her wanted to run back to where Taehyang lay in the burning ruins. But she had made a promise. She had to save their daughter. The transport was packed with survivors, all of them injured, all of them in shock. The pilot didn't wait for a full load. As soon as Yuna was aboard, the ramp started closing. Through the gap, she could see the colony burning below. She could see the Voth ship still firing, still destroying, still killing. Mom! Subin was crying, reaching back toward the ground. Dad is still down there. We have to go back. Yuna held her daughter tight, tears streaming down her face. I'm sorry, baby. I'm so sorry. The transport shook as it climbed through the atmosphere, dodging Voth fire. Through the windows, Yuna could see other ships trying to escape. One exploded in a ball of flame as a Voth fighter caught it. Hundreds of lives gone in an instant. She buried Subin's face in her shoulder, trying to shield her from seeing. But she couldn't shield her from the truth. She couldn't shield her from the knowledge that their home was gone, that her father was gone, that everything they had built was burning. The transport made it to orbit, where a human cargo ship was waiting to receive refugees. But even as they docked, Yuna could see Haven's Rest below, the whole colony engulfed in flames. 400,000 people had lived there this morning. Now most of them were dead. She pulled off her scarf, the one Taehyang had given her on their wedding day, and wrapped it around Subin. It was all she had left of him now. All any of them had were fragments and memories and burning rage. Why? Subin sobbed. Why did they do this? Yuna didn't have an answer. She held her daughter and watched their world burn and felt something cold settle in her chest where warmth had been. The Voth had made a terrible mistake today. They had proven what they thought of humanity, that human lives meant nothing, that human children were acceptable casualties, that human civilization could be erased on a whim, but they had also proven something else. They had proven that humanity could no longer afford to be merciful. That peace had failed not because humans were weak, but because they had offered peace to a species that only understood strength. The Voth had wanted to send a message. They had wanted to teach humanity a lesson about power and submission and fear. They had succeeded. But the lesson humanity learned was not the one the Voth intended. As the transport ship jumped away carrying its cargo of survivors and orphans and widows, Yuna held her daughter and whispered a promise into her hair. A promise that Taehyang's death would not be forgotten, that the 400,000 souls who died today would be remembered, and that the Voth would learn what happened when they mistook human peace for human weakness. They would learn in fire and blood and ash. The news reached Earth 12 hours after the massacre. Fleet Admiral Bora was in a meeting when her aide burst through the door, his face pale with shock. He didn't say anything. He just turned on the view screen. The footage was being broadcast on every channel across human space. The Voth had sent it deliberately, proud of their work. It showed Haven's Rest colony burning. It showed orbital strikes hitting schools and hospitals. It showed people running, screaming, dying, and at the end it showed Regent Varash speaking directly to the camera. This is what happens to species who do not understand their place, the Regent said. The Voth are supreme. All others will submit or burn. Let this be a lesson to humanity. Bow, or be destroyed. Bora watched the footage in silence. She watched it all the way through, forcing herself to see every second of horror. When it ended, she sat very still in her chair. Her hands were shaking. Not from fear, from rage so pure and cold it felt like ice in her veins. Admiral? Her aide asked quietly. Are you? Get me the president, Bora said. Her voice was calm, but something in it made the aide step back. Get me the entire emergency council. Get me every military commander in Sol system. Do it now. Within 2 hours, the emergency council chamber was full. President Yoon-ji sat at the head of the table, her face drawn with exhaustion and grief. General Hyunwoo stood by the wall, his arms crossed, his expression unreadable. Intelligence Director Sang-hoon was reviewing reports on his tablet, his jaw clenched tight. They weren't the only ones. The chamber held every important voice in human government. Scientists, diplomats, military leaders, all of them had seen the footage. All of them knew what this moment meant. 400,000 dead, President Yoonji said quietly. Most of them civilians, children, families. They gave the colony no chance to fight back. Her voice broke. They just murdered them. It gets worse, Sang-hoon said, looking up from his tablet. The Voth are broadcasting this to other species. They're using Haven's Rest as an example. They want everyone to know that humans can be killed without consequence. That we're weak, are we? General Hyun-woo asked. His voice was flat, cold. Are we weak, Director? Sang-hoon met his eyes. No, General. We are not. Admiral Bora stood up. Every eye in the room turned to her. They all knew her son had been on Haven's Rest. He had been a teacher at the primary school. Now he was Ash. I have prepared a full military analysis, she said. Her voice was steady, professional. She had to be professional, because if she let herself feel what she was feeling, she would break. The Voth hegemony controls 40 systems. They have 12 major homeworlds and 63 significant military installations. Their fleet consists of approximately 800 capital ships and 3,000 support vessels. She activated a holographic map showing Voth space. Red markers indicated every military target. Traditionally, we would recommend a measured response, Bora continued. Targeted strikes against military assets. Negotiations backed by force. A war of containment that minimizes casualties on both sides. She paused, looking around the room at the faces of humanity's leaders. I am not recommending that, she said quietly. I am recommending total war. Complete destruction of the Voth military machine. Not just defeat, annihilation. We remove their ability to ever threaten anyone again. The chamber erupted. A dozen voices spoke at once, some agreeing, others objecting. President Yoonji raised her hand for silence. Admiral, what you're describing is, She struggled for words. That level of warfare hasn't been seen since Earth's world wars. We swore we would never wage total war again. We built our entire civilization on the principle of proportional response. Proportional response to what? Bora asked, her voice hardening. They killed 400,000 civilians. They targeted schools. They murdered children to make a political statement. How do we respond proportionally to that? We can't let grief drive our strategy, one of the diplomats said. If we escalate to total war, we become like them. We lose our moral authority, General Hyun-woo laughed. It was a harsh, bitter sound. Moral authority? They killed our children to make a point. We will make a point they will never forget. But at what cost? The diplomat pressed. How many of our own people will die? How much blood are we willing to shed for vengeance? It's not vengeance, Commander Daewon said from the back of the room. He had arrived on Earth just hours ago, his diplomatic mission a failure. Now he stood in his military uniform, his face grim. It's survival. The Voth made their position clear. They see us as inferior, as prey. If we respond with anything less than overwhelming force, they will attack again. And again, until we're all dead or enslaved. President Yoonji rubbed her temples. Is there no option for negotiation? No, Daewon interrupted. I tried. We all tried. They laughed at us. They called our peace weakness and our diplomacy fear. And then they killed 400,000 people to prove they could. Sang-hoon pulled up new data on the screens. I have another factor to consider, Madam President. Other species are watching. If we don't respond with strength, if we show that humans can be slaughtered without consequence, we become targets for every aggressive species in the galaxy. They'll see us as easy prey. But if we wage total war, the diplomat argued, they'll see us as monsters. Good, General Hyun-woo said flatly. Let them see us as monsters. Let them be too afraid to ever attack a human world again. The argument continued for another hour, but Bora could see the shift happening in the room. One by one, the voices of caution were falling silent. The weight of 400,000 dead was too heavy. The footage of children running through burning streets was too clear. Finally, President Yoonji called for silence again. She looked old suddenly, burdened by the weight of the decision she had to make. Before we vote, she said quietly, I want you all to see something. She activated another screen. It showed a young girl, maybe 8 years old, sitting in a refugee center. She was holding a burned scarf and staring at nothing. Her face was empty of expression, shock having stolen everything else away. This is Subin, the president said. Her father died shielding her from the blast. Her mother died getting her to a transport. She's one of 50,000 survivors. I spoke with her an hour ago. Do you know what she asked me? The room was silent. She asked me if we were going to stop them, Yoonji said, her voice breaking. She asked if we were going to make sure they never hurt anyone else. And she stopped, composing herself. I had to tell her I didn't know. Because I don't know what we are as a species anymore. Are we the people who chose peace? Or are we the people who won't let the murder of our children go unanswered? She looked around the room at each of them. We built our civilization on the idea that we had evolved past total war, she continued. That we were better than our violent history. And we are better. We tried peace. We offered diplomacy. We extended our hand. Her voice hardened, and they answered by burning our children alive. President Yoonji stood up, her decision made. The Voth wanted to teach us a lesson about power, she said. They wanted to show us that peace is weakness and mercy is foolishness. They wanted to break us. She paused. Instead, they reminded us of what we're capable of when we stop holding back. She looked at Admiral Bora. Give the order, Admiral. Full mobilization. Every ship. Every soldier. Every weapon system we have. We're not fighting for conquest or glory. We're fighting to end this threat permanently. Bora nodded slowly. And the rules of engagement. The president's face was carved from stone. Military targets only, but no mercy. No restraint. No negotiations until their military capability is completely destroyed. They wanted to see human rage? Her eyes were cold as ice. Show them. The vote was unanimous. Within 12 hours, humanity was transforming. Shipyards that had been building cargo vessels started producing warships. Scientists who had been researching peaceful applications began developing weapons. Soldiers who had been training for peacekeeping operations prepared for war. Admiral Bora addressed the entire human space force from the command deck of the massive carrier Indomitable. Behind her, thousands of ships were assembling, the largest fleet humanity had ever created. We go not as conquerors, she said, her voice carrying to every ship, every soldier, every person who would fight in the coming war. We go as executioners. The Voth have shown us what they are. They have shown us that mercy is wasted on them, that peace is impossible with them, that the only language they understand is force. She paused, looking out at the assembled fleet. So we will speak to them in the only language they understand, she continued. We will speak in fire and steel and absolute determination. We will dismantle their military machine piece by piece. We will make them understand that humanity tried peace and they chose war. And when humans wage war, we don't stop until the threat is eliminated completely. Around her, thousands of ships powered their weapons. Millions of soldiers prepared themselves for what was coming. An entire species that had chosen peace was remembering why they had made that choice. Because they knew what they became when they chose war. Commander Daewon stood on the bridge of the human diplomatic vessel, watching the alien planet grow larger on the view screen. Krell Prime looked beautiful from space, with its purple oceans and silver cities that stretched across 3 continents. He had seen many worlds in his 20 years of service, but this one felt different. This one felt dangerous. We're receiving their docking instructions now, Commander, said Lieutenant Hana from her station. The young officer's voice was steady, but Daewon could see the tension in her shoulders. Everyone on the bridge knew what was at stake today. The Voth had contacted humanity 2 years ago. They were an old race, powerful and proud. Their empire controlled 40 star systems, and their technology was centuries ahead of human engineering. When they first spoke to Earth's leaders, they made their position clear. They were the dominant power in this region of space. Humanity would either submit to their authority or face consequences. Earth had chosen to negotiate instead. Ambassador Jiwoo walked onto the bridge, adjusting her formal uniform. She was younger than Daewon, full of hope that peace could be achieved through words and understanding. He had once been like her, before he had seen what some species were truly capable of. Do you think they'll accept the treaty? Jiwoo asked, standing beside him. Daewon didn't answer immediately. He watched the Voth ships moving around their planet like silver insects. Each one was twice the size of a human battleship. I think they'll hear us out, he finally said. Whether they listen is another matter. The ship docked at Krell Prime's orbital station an hour later. The Voth escorts were already waiting. They were tall creatures, standing nearly 8 feet high with scaled skin that shimmered green and gold under the station's lights. Their eyes were cold and reptilian, showing no emotion as they led the human delegation through metal corridors. The council chamber was massive, designed to make visitors feel small. Regent Vorash sat on a raised platform at the far end, surrounded by his advisors. He was the largest Voth Dewan had ever seen, his scales darker and more elaborate than the others. When he spoke, his voice echoed through the chamber like thunder. "So the humans have come to offer us terms," Vorash said, and several of his advisors made a hissing sound that Dewan recognized as laughter. How generous of such a young species. Jiwoo stepped forward, holding a data tablet containing the treaty. Her voice was clear and diplomatic. "Regent Vorash, we come in peace. Humanity wishes to establish mutual respect and cooperation between our peoples. This treaty outlines mutual respect," Vorash interrupted. "You speak as if you have something to offer us. Your technology is primitive. Your empire consists of barely 20 worlds. You have no military strength worth mentioning." He leaned forward, his eyes gleaming. "And yet you dare to negotiate as equals?" Dewan felt his jaw tighten, but he kept his face neutral. This was going exactly as he had feared. Jiwoo pressed on. "We may be young, Regent, but we are not weak. We ask only for peaceful coexistence. Our treaty offers trade agreements, cultural exchange, and a non-aggression pact that benefits both our peoples." "Benefits both our peoples," Vorash repeated slowly, mockingly. "Tell me, Ambassador, what happens if we refuse your generous offer?" The chamber went silent. Even the Voth advisors stopped their hissing laughter. Jiwoo glanced at Dewan, uncertain how to answer. Dewan stepped forward. "Then we leave in peace, Regent. But we will remember that we tried." Vorash stared at him for a long moment. "You are military, yes? I can see it in the way you stand, the way you watch for threats. Tell me, Commander, does your species even understand what real war looks like? Have you ever fought an enemy who could actually destroy you?" "Yes," Dewan said quietly. "We have fought ourselves. For thousands of years we fought each other until our world nearly burned. We learned what war truly costs. That's why we choose peace now." "Ah," Vorash said, standing from his throne. He was massive, towering over the humans even from across the chamber. "So you negotiate from fear. You seek peace because you are afraid of conflict. This is what I thought. Humans are weak. You feel too much. You care too much for your own kind. This makes you soft." He walked down from his platform, his claws clicking on the metal floor. "Let me tell you what the Voth understand, Commander. The strong take what they want. The weak accept what they are given. Your emotions, your empathy, your love for peace, these are not strengths. They are weaknesses that will destroy you." Lieutenant Hana's voice crackled in Daewon's earpiece. "Commander, I'm detecting military buildups near our colony worlds. Multiple Voth fleets are moving into position." Daewon's blood went cold, but his expression didn't change. He kept his eyes locked on Vorash. "We came here in good faith, Regent. We offered you peace. But let me be very clear about something." He took a step closer, and Jiwoo put a hand on his arm in warning. He ignored her. "We offer peace not because we are weak," Daewon said, his voice low and hard. "We offer it because we know what we become when we choose war. We know what we're capable of when we stop holding back, and we know that once we start, we don't stop until the threat is completely eliminated." Vorash laughed, a deep rumbling sound. "Is that a threat, Commander? From a species with barely 24 warships?" "It's a warning," Daewon replied. "One I hope you'll remember." "I will remember this conversation," Vorash said, his amusement clear. "I will remember the day the humans came to beg for peace and tried to threaten me, when their begging failed. It will be a good story to tell." He turned away, dismissing them with a wave of his clawed hand. "You may leave now. Return to your primitive worlds. The Voth will contact you when we have decided your fate. Until then, stay out of our way." The human delegation was escorted back to their ship in silence. Once aboard, Jiwoo turned to Daewon, her face pale. "He's going to attack us, isn't he?" Daewon nodded slowly. "Hana, what's the status of those fleet movements?" "They're surrounding Haven's Rest colony, Commander. They're not hiding it anymore." Jiwoo covered her mouth with her hand. "That's 400,000 civilians, families, children." "I know," Daewon said quietly. He looked out at the Voth homeworld one last time as their ship pulled away. The beautiful planet with its silver cities, so confident in its power, so certain of its superiority. "Set course for Earth," he ordered. "Maximum speed. And send a priority message to Fleet Command. Tell them we tried peace. Tell them the Voth refused. And tell them, he paused, choosing his words carefully. Tell them to prepare for war, real war. The kind we swore we'd never fight again. As the ship jumped to faster-than-light travel, Daewon stood alone on the bridge, staring at the stars. He had meant every word of his warning to Vorash. Humanity had learned what it was capable of centuries ago, during their own terrible conflicts. They had buried that capacity deep, choosing to become better, choosing peace. But if the Voth forced them to remember, if they forced humanity to unleash what they had locked away, then the Regent would learn the truth. The most dangerous species in the galaxy wasn't the one that loved war. It was the one that understood war too well and chose peace anyway. Because when that species was forced to fight, they didn't do it with pride or honor or glory. They did it with cold, calculated absolute efficiency, and they didn't stop until the threat was ash.